Imagine yourself standing on your front porch, the morning air cool and sharp, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from a neighbor's garden. The street is quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of a distant lawnmower and the occasional chirp of a sparrow perched on the neatly trimmed hedges. This is Meadowview Estates, a suburban enclave where every lawn is manicured, every mailbox polished, and every life carefully curated to fit the unspoken rules of perfection. But beneath this polished veneer, a constant struggle not just to belong, but to exist as you are. For you, that struggle takes the form of a single, vibrant flag flapping gently in the breeze above your porch. It's a flag that means something to you, a symbol of pride, heritage, or perhaps just a splash of defiance in this sea of conformity. And it's a flag that has just become the spark for a fire you never saw coming. Your name is Alex Harper, a graphic designer who moved to Meadowview 2 years ago, seeking a quiet place to rebuild after a messy divorce. The flaggable design of crimson and gold, inspired by your family's ancestral crest, went up on your porch the day you moved in. It was a small act of reclaiming your space, your identity, in a neighborhood that seemed to demand sameness. At first, no one commented. Neighbors smiled politely as they passed, their eyes flicking upward to the flag before darting away. You'd catch snippets of their conversations about property values, about keeping things tidy, but you thought little of it. After all, the flag was within HOA guidelines, no larger than 3 feet by 5, securely mounted, and in good condition. You'd checked the rule book twice, just to be sure. But then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, tucked into your mailbox like an unwelcome guest. The envelope bore the HOA's embossed logo, a stylized oak tree that seemed to loom rather than grow. Inside, a single page, typed in crisp, impersonal font, informed you that your flag was in violation of community aesthetic standards. The phrase was vague, deliberately so, and it carried no specific rule number or reference. The letter demanded the flag's removal within 48 hours, signed by Karen Wentworth, president of the Meadowview Estates Homeowners Association. You'd heard of Karen before whispers at the community barbecue about her clipboard, her sharp-eyed inspections, her unrelenting need to control. But this was your first direct encounter, and it felt like a gauntlet thrown at your feet. You stood in your kitchen, the letter crinkling in your hand, the scent of your morning coffee now sour in the air. The flag wasn't just fabric, it was a piece of you, a reminder of where you came from and what you'd fought to keep. Removing it felt like surrendering, not just to Karen, but to the suffocating weight of Meadowview's expectations. You decided to fight back not with shouting or defiance, but with the quiet precision of someone who knows how to read fine print. You pulled out the HOA rulebook, its pages dog-eared from your initial move-in paranoia, and began to scour it for loopholes. Hours passed, the sunlight shifting across your living room floor, casting long shadows over the scattered papers. And then you found it, a clause about rooftop fixtures, buried in a dense paragraph about satellite dishes and solar panels. It stated that homeowners could claim exclusive use of their roof space for certain installations, provided they filed a formal request with the HOA board. The clause was obscure, rarely invoked, but it was there. A crack in Karen's armor. You spent the next day drafting your request. your fingers steady on the keyboard as you outlined your plan to install a decorative rooftop feature that would comply with all regulations. You didn't mention the flag knot yet. Let Karen think you were planning a weather vane or a skylight. You mailed the request certified, ensuring it would land on her desk with a satisfying thud. The act felt like planting a seed, one that might grow into something far larger than you'd imagined. But as you dropped the envelope into the mailbox, you couldn't shake the feeling that you'd just stepped onto a chessboard where Karen had been playing for years. The next morning, you woke to the sound of a car door slamming. Peering through your blinds, you saw Karen herself standing in your driveway, her posture rigid, her blonde bob gleaming under the sun. She held a clipboard, her pen tapping a staccato rhythm against the paper. You stepped outside, the flag still fluttering above you, and met her gaze. Her smile was tight, practiced, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Harper," she began, her voice smooth as polished glass, "I see you haven't removed the flag yet. I'd hate for this to escalate." The word escalate hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats. You explained calmly that you'd reviewed the rules, that the flag complied, but she cut you off. "The board decides what's appropriate, not you," she said, her pen jabbing toward the flag like a weapon. "This isn't personal, it's about maintaining our community's standards." You felt the heat rising in your chest, but you kept your voice steady. "I've submitted a request to the board," you said, watching her eyes narrow, "for a rooftop feature. I assume you'll review it fairly." For a moment, she said nothing, her lips pursing as if tasting something bitter. Then she turned, on her heel, her heels clicking against the pavement as she retreated to her car. You watched her drive away, the air thick with the scent of her floral perfume lingering like a warning. This wasn't just about a flag anymore. It was about power. About who got to decide what belonged in Meadowview. And you weren't about to back down. As the days passed, the neighborhood began to feel different. Neighbors who once waved now avoided your gaze, their footsteps quickening as they passed your house. You heard murmurs at the community pool, snippets of troublemaker and stirring things up. The flag, once a quiet symbol, had become a beacon, drawing attention you hadn't sought. You started noticing Karen's car circling your street, her eyes scanning your property like a hawk circling prey. Each time you felt the rhythm of your life shift, the quiet mornings now laced with tension, the jasmine-scented air now heavy with anticipation. You checked your mailbox daily, waiting for the HOA's response to your request, knowing it would be the next move in a game you hadn't chosen but were now determined to play. By the end of the week, the response arrived. Another embossed envelope, another crisp letter. Your rooftop request was under review, but the tone was clear. Karen wasn't pleased. The letter included a new citation, this time for excessive outdoor decor, pointing to a single potted plant on your porch. It was absurd, petty, a reminder that Karen could wield the rulebook like a blade. But you weren't deterred. You began researching local property laws, consulting a friend who worked in real estate, piecing together a plan that would turn Karen's own rules against her. The flag stayed up, a silent challenge, and you felt the first stirrings of something bolder planned to claim not just your roof, but your place in this neighborhood, no matter what it took. Imagine yourself standing at your window, the evening, light casting long shadows across the pristine lawns of Meadowview Estates. The air carries the faint tang of charcoal from a neighbor's barbecue, mingling with the ever-present jasmine that seems to cling to every breath. Your flag still flutters above your porch, its crimson and gold catching the fading sun, a quiet defiance against the weight of Karen Wentworth's authority. The rhythm of your life, once steady, now hums with a constant undercurrent of tension, a chess game where every move feels like a gamble. Karen's latest letter, citing your potted plant as excessive decor, sits on your kitchen counter, its words a taunt, but you're not retreating. You've found a foothold in the HOA's rulebook, and now you're ready to push back, to expose the cracks in Karen's carefully constructed empire. Karen Wentworth is no stranger to Meadowview. Her name is whispered in the same breath as the neighborhood's pristine flower beds and perfectly aligned mailboxes. She's the HOA president, a title she wears like a crown, her authority woven into the fabric of every cul-de-sac. To the untrained eye, she's a model of suburban perfection. Her lawn is a flawless green canvas. Her colonial-style home gleams with fresh paint, and her smile, flashed at community events, is as polished as her silver SUV. But beneath the surface, there's a sharpness to her, a need to control that borders on obsession. You've seen it in the way she patrols the streets, her clipboard a constant companion, her eyes scanning for any deviation from her vision of Meadowview. The flag, your flag, is just the latest target in her crusade to maintain what she calls community standards. You start to notice the patterns in Karen's behavior. Every morning, as you sip your coffee, the scent of roasted beans grounding you. You see her car glide past your house, slowing just enough to note the flag's presence. She doesn't knock again, but her presence is a message, heavy as the humid air before a storm. Neighbors begin to share stories, cautiously, as if afraid she might overhear. There's the couple down the street who received a fine for leaving their trash cans out an hour past curfew. The single mom who was told her son's basketball hoop was unsightly and had to be removed. Each story builds a picture of Karen's entitlement belief that Meadowview is hers to shape, its residents mere pieces on her board. You decide to dig deeper, driven by a mix of curiosity and resolve. The HOA board meetings, held monthly in the community center, are open to all homeowners, though few attend. You've never gone, preferring to keep your distance from the bureaucracy, but now it feels necessary. You arrive early, the room smelling of polished wood and stale coffee, the fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow. Karen presides at the head of the table, her posture regal, her voice clipped as she reviews the agenda. The other board members, 3 men and a woman, all older, all nodding at her, every word seem less like colleagues and more like subjects. You take a seat in the back, your notebook open, and listen as she dismisses concerns about rising HOA fees with a wave of her hand. It's for the good of the community, she says, her tone final, as if no further discussion is needed. When you raise your hand to ask about your rooftop request, the air shifts. Karen's eyes lock onto yours, her smile tight. "Mr. Harper," she says, her voice dripping with false warmth, "your request is still under review. These things take time to ensure compliance." You press calmly, asking for a timeline, citing the rulebook's requirement for a response within 14 days. The room grows quiet, the other board members shifting in their seats. Karen's smile falters, just for a moment, before she recovers. "We'll address it at the next meeting," she says, her pen tapping the table, a rhythm that echoes the tension in your chest. You leave the meeting with no answers, but with a clearer sense of her game: delay, deflect, dominate. Back home, you dive into research, the glow of your laptop screen illuminating the quiet of your living room. You pull up public records, HOA, bylaws, even Karen's property details. What you find is a revelation. Her roof, the one she so proudly maintains, has a satellite dish that's slightly larger than the allowed dimensions. A minor violation, but a violation nonetheless. It's a chink in her armor, a detail she's overlooked in her quest to police. Others, you cross-reference this with the rooftop clause you found earlier, realizing that if you can claim your roof space, you might force her to confront her own rule-breaking. The idea feels audacious, almost reckless, but it's a spark that ignites your next move. You draft a new letter, this time to the entire HOA board, requesting an expedited review of your rooftop feature and subtly mentioning the importance of consistent enforcement of all rules, including those for rooftop installations. You don't name Karen directly, but the implication is clear. You mail it, the act feeling like a knight moving into position on the chessboard. The next day, you notice Karen's car parked across the street, her eyes fixed on your house. She doesn't approach, but her presence is a warning, a reminder that she's watching, waiting for you to falter. The neighborhood begins to feel like a pressure cooker. You overhear snippets of conversation at the grocery store, debating whether your flag is worth the trouble. Some admire your stand, others see it as a disruption to the rhythm of their lives. You start to feel the weight of their scrutiny, the way their glances linger on your flag, your porch, your very existence. But you also notice something else: cracks in Karen's facade. A neighbor mentions, offhand, that Karen's been pushing for a new community gate, one that would cost thousands in additional fees. Another complains about her insistence on approving every exterior paint color, even when the choices are neutral. Her entitlement, once a quiet force, is starting to chafe, and you sense an opportunity. You decide to test the waters, inviting a few neighbors for coffee on your porch, the flag overhead a silent statement. The conversation starts, cautiously, of weather, of school events, but soon turns to the HOA. One neighbor, a retired teacher named Linda, admits she's tired of Karen's micromanaging. "She told me my roses were too red," Linda says, her voice low, as if Karen might hear through the jasmine-scented air. Another, a young dad named Mark, mentions a fine he got for parking his truck in his own driveway. The stories pile up, each one a thread in a tapestry of resentment. You listen, nodding, planting seeds of resistance without pushing too hard. You mention your rooftop request casually, framing it as a way to work within the rules. Linda's eyes light up, and Mark nods thoughtfully. You're not alone anymore. As the week ends, you receive a new letter from the HOA. Your rooftop request has been denied, citing aesthetic concerns. The language mirrors the flag citation, vague and unyielding, signed by Karen herself. But you're not surprised. You expected her to push back, to tighten her grip. What she doesn't know is that you've already consulted a lawyer, a friend who specializes in property disputes. He's reviewed the HOA bylaws and confirmed your rooftop clause is airtight. You file an appeal, attaching a detailed report on Karen's own satellite dish violation, copied to every board member. The move is bold, a direct challenge to her authority, and as you drop the appeal into the mailbox, you feel the rhythm of your life shift again toward something bigger, something unstoppable. Picture yourself on your porch, the evening air, thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint buzz of cicadas in the distance. Your flag still hangs proudly above, its crimson and gold catching the last rays of sunlight. A beacon in the quiet war you've waged against Karen Wentworth's iron grip on Meadowview Estates. The rhythm of your life, once predictable, now pulses with a restless energy, each day bringing a new move in this escalating chess match. Your appeal to the HOA board, complete with evidence of Karen's own rule-breaking satellite dish, has been mailed, and the neighborhood feels like a coiled spring ready to snap. You've stirred something in Meadowview, a ripple of defiance that's starting to spread, and Karen knows it. What began as a dispute over a flag is spiraling into chaos, and the rooftop of your home is about to become the stage for a confrontation no one saw coming. The morning after you sent the appeal, you wake to an unfamiliar sound, the sharp clatter of metal against pavement. Stepping outside, you find a group of workers in orange vests setting up cones around your street, their voices carrying over the hum of a generator. Karen stands nearby, her clipboard in hand, directing them with the precision of a conductor. You approach, the air heavy with the scent of asphalt and diesel, and ask what's happening. Routine maintenance, she says, her smile tight, her eyes avoiding yours. But you notice the workers are focused on your property line, measuring the curb with a tape measure, their tools gleaming in the morning light. It's no coincidence. This is a show of power, a reminder that Karen controls the strings of Meadowview's infrastructure. You return to your house, the flag fluttering above like a silent ally, and check your email. There's a new message from the HOA sent to all residents, announcing an emergency meeting to address recent violations. Your name isn't mentioned, but the timing is too precise to be accidental. You feel the weight of the neighborhood's eyes on you, the whispers growing louder. At the community center that evening, the room is packed more residents than you've ever seen at a meeting. The air smells of nervous sweat and cheap coffee, the fluorescent lights casting stark shadows on the faces around you. Karen takes her place at the head of the table, her posture as rigid as ever. But there's a new edge to her, a tremor in her voice as she begins. We're here to ensure our community remains a place of harmony, she says, her words clipped, her pen tapping a frantic rhythm. Harmony, you think, is the last thing she's fostering when the topic of your rooftop appeal comes up. Karen dismisses it with a wave. Mr. Harper's request is frivolous, she says, her voice rising just enough to betray her unease. It's a distraction from the real issue, unauthorized decorations that threaten our property values. She gestures toward a projected image of your flag, the crimson and gold glaringly bright on the screen. The room murmurs, a mix of agreement and unease. You stand, your heart steady despite the eyes boring into you, and calmly present your case. You cite the rooftop clause, the board's obligation to review it fairly, and, pointedly, the need for consistent rule enforcement. You don't mention Karen's satellite dish not yet, but the implication hangs in the air, thick as the jasmine. Outside, the room grows quieter, the tension palpable. As Karen's smile falters, the meeting ends without a decision, but the chaos has been unleashed. Neighbors begin taking sides, their voices spilling onto the streets of Meadowview. Some rally behind Karen, citing her years of keeping things orderly. Others, emboldened by your stand, share their own grievances, fines for minor infractions, demands to repaint perfectly good fences, Karen's relentless inspections. Linda, the retired teacher, corners you outside, her eyes bright with defiance. She's gone too far, she whispers, her voice low, as if Karen might hear through the evening air. Mark, the young dad, nods in agreement, mentioning he's found old HOA records that show Karen bypassing votes to push her own agenda. The seeds you planted are sprouting, and Meadowview is no longer a monolith of compliance. But Karen doesn't relent. The next day, you find a new citation taped to your door, this time for obstructing community aesthetics with your flagpole's shadow. It's absurd, a desperate grasp at control, but it's effective, you notice. Neighbors avoiding your gaze, their footsteps quickening as they pass your house. The workers return, now installing a decorative fence near your property line, one that conveniently blocks part of your view. You confront Karen, finding her supervising the work, her floral perfume cloying in the morning air. This is harassment, you say, your voice low but firm. She turns, her eyes cold. This is enforcement, Mr. Harper, she replies. You'd do well to comply. The words are a challenge, a line drawn in the sand. You take the fight to the next level. Your lawyer friend helps you file a formal complaint with the county, citing Karen's selective enforcement and her own violation. You also rally your allies Linda, Mark, and a handful of others, organizing a petition to call for a special election to replace the HOA board. The petition spreads like wildfire, signatures piling up as neighbors vent their frustrations. Karen responds with a flurry of new citations, targeting your allies, Linda's roses, Mark's truck, even a child's chalk drawing on a driveway. The neighborhood becomes a battlefield, the air thick with tension. The once quiet streets now buzzing with heated conversations and sidelong glances. The chaos peaks when you receive approval from the county for your rooftop claim. The letter arrives on a Saturday, the paper crisp in your hands, stating that your roof is legally yours for approved installations. You waste no time. With the help of a contractor friend, you install a new flagpole on your roof, taller and sturdier than the one on your porch. The crimson and gold flag now soaring above Meadowview. The sight is breathtaking, the flag catching the wind with a soft snap visible from every corner of the neighborhood. But it's also a declaration of war. Karen's car screeches to a halt in front of your house that evening, her face pale with fury as she steps out, clipboard in hand. "This is unacceptable," she shouts, her voice echoing down the street. Neighbors gather, phones in hand, recording the scene as she demands you remove the flag immediately. You stand your ground, the rooftop flag, a symbol of your resolve. "It's legal," you say, holding up the county's approval. "Check your own roof, Karen. You might find something." Out of compliance? Her eyes widen, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she masks it with indignation. The crowd murmurs, some nodding in your favor, others whispering about Karen's satellite dish. The confrontation ends abruptly as she storms off, but the air crackles with the promise of something bigger. You feel the rhythm of your life shift again, the chaos swirling around you like a storm. And you know the final move is coming, a move that will either break Karen's hold or escalate this fight to a place no one can predict.